Now, in this video, we are gonna discuss about hyperparameter tuning with GridSearchCV. Now, I think most of the people confuse between what is hyperparameter, what are parameters, and why we perform GridSearchCV, and basically what is the importance of GridSearchCV in the model performance or model training. So in this, after watching this video, I'm pretty sure that all your concepts about this will be like crystal clear. So basically what happens is that in almost any machine learning project, we train different models on the data set and select one with the best parameter. But there is always a room for the improvement, and we can't be pretty sure that okay, this for this particular model is the best for the problem in hand. So basically, our aim is to improve the model in any possible way. So one important factor in the performance of the model are their hyperparameters, and we can set the appropriate values of these hyperparameters. Okay, so the performance of this model can improve significantly. To improve the model performance significantly, we can set the appropriate value of these hyperparameters. Now let us talk about how we can optimize the value for the hyperparameter of the model by using GridSearchCV. Okay, now what is GridSearchCV? So basically it is a process of performing hyperparameter tuning in order to determine the optimal value for the model. It is a very important point to note that in order to perform grid search CV, we have to determine the optimum value for a given model. As we talked about, the performance of the model significantly depends on the values of hyperparameters. So there is no way in the advance the best values for the hyperparameter ideally, but we'll need to try all possible values. And doing this manually can considerably take a lot of time as well as resources. So, to save our time and to save our resources, we use GridSearchCV to automate the tuning of hyperparameter. Now you understand why we use GridSearchCV. So basically, GridSearchCV is used to automate this process to automate the tuning of hyperparameters. And in the above section, we discussed why we use hyperparameters to optimize the values we pass to the dataset. Now, GridSearchCV functions come with sklearn, or we can say that scikit-learn in the model selection package. So it is important to import it to the system. Now this function helps to look through the prediction hyperparameter and fit your estimators on your training set so that in the end we can select the best parameter from the listed hyperparameters. Now basically how it works and how we define the hyperparameters. So we pass the predefined values for the hyperparameters to the grid search function, and for this we define a Python dictionary in which we mention a particular hyperparameters along with the values. Here is some example. Like we have a key value pair, we have a dictionary in which we are passing all the possible hyperparameters. So these hyperparameters C, gamma and kernel is for the SVM, which is support vector machine. So here I am passing the values for C like 0 0.1, 10, and for the gamma as well as kernel for the RBF, linear and sigmoid. So these we all study in the SVM model. Don't worry if you don't know about it. It's just, you can simply take it as key value pair in the dictionary. Now, GridSearchCV, what GridSearchCV do is that it's try all the possible values in the dictionary and evaluate the model for each combination using the cross-validation method. I repeat, GridSearchCV tries all the combinations of all these possible values in the dictionary and evaluate the model for each combination using cross-validation method. Hence, after using this function, we get the accuracy as well as loss for every combination of hyperparameters, and from these combinations of hyperparameters, we can choose the one with the best performance for our model. So these lines are very important to understand the above all concept, and these four lines summarizes whole article in a very simpler way. So what GridSearch CV is do it's it tries all the combination of all the values passed in this dictionary and evaluate the model for each combination using cross validation method, so that after using this function and passing all these values, we get accuracy and loss for every combination of hyperparameters, and we can choose one of the best performance. Now here is the example how can we use. So I recommend you to go to the documentation of this grid search CV. So you will know about all the parameters we pass and read all the parameters, what they do and what are the basically where which parameter acting as a hyperparameter, or how can we change it, or how can we tune it. So here's the brief discussion about the parameters we passed: estimators, grid scoring, CV, verbose, and in jobs. Now, let me discuss about the difference between the parameters and the hyperparameters. Now, basically, in the parameters, the configuration model parameters are the internal model, but in the hyperparameters, we can explicitly specify and control the training process. In the parameters, we have prediction required to use the parameters, and in hyperparameters, model optimization necessities to use the hyperparameters. Basically, these are specified or guessed while the model is being trained, and hyperparameters, these are established prior at the starting when we are doing the model training. These are the internal, I said, these are the parameters I show you above. These are internal to the model, and hyperparameters are external to the model. These are learned and set by the model itself, and these are set manually by a machine learner engineer. So now you get the difference between parameter and hyperparameter, and what is the job of a machine learner in case you don't know how machine learner do is performing the hyperparameter tuning using the grid search CV. Basically, for performing the cross validation, we use a technique known as grid search CV. One another technique we can use and we are currently using and in practice is k-fold validation, cross validation method. So for some particular problems, we can also use that. But in this article, I was trying to teach you about the grid search, particularly what grid search CV is. So I didn't mention anything about K-fold validation, but in the next video, I'll try to make a separate video for what is K-fold cross validation. So that's all about this video. I hope you like it. Thank you.